My name's Debbie. I spent lockdown with my husband and kids. It's probably the longest time we have ever spent with each other in one fell swoop. You know, after 30 years of marriage, you maybe take 2 weeks off here together or 2 weeks off there, or maybe none at all, where you split your holidays up so that you can cover school holidays with the kids so you don't need childcare. So genuinely didn't know how it was going to go. Did wonder if maybe one of us would be buried at the bottom of the garden by the end of it. But actually, we had a wicked time. We sort of thought that it was like retirement in training. So it was good to know that we all got on. Had a really good time. I know a lot of people didn't. I know a lot of people felt really claustrophobic, stuck at home, but we've got a big garden. It was beautiful weather that year. I wonder how much of that was due to, half the world being in lockdown and not so many cars driving around. But we had a great time. We spent a lot of time watching movies, and I think we leveled up Netflix. My husband and the kids did a lot of puzzles, a lot of cooking. I think a lot of people spent time cooking when they could. Because we've got a dog, we did a lot of dog walking, kind of explored different areas of Folkestone with the dog. I do wonder if people will look back on the year 2020 and 2021 with a bit of disbelief, especially if they actually weren't around those days. It'll be like us looking back at sort of the pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic. Was it real? Was it a conspiracy? I know with the sort of Spanish flu, people really didn't believe that it killed a third of the population. So I do wonder whether people kind of half disbelieve it. But what made me amused in a way is that even sort of now, if anything was based, if you watched a film and it was based in 2020, everybody's walking around with masks on, people are socially distancing, and that just seems really alien again. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was this really weird thing. Everybody's wearing masks and gloves and sanitizer coming out of your ear holes. And now that seems so long ago, and so many people don't even carry sanitizer anymore. It seems quite strange that we all lived through this really intense period of being really cautious, and now everybody's sort of thrown it all out with abandon. I think not in the first lockdown, but in second and third lockdown, I'd actually already opened my business. So I was a drop-off hub for donating clothes. So the local community clothes bank would request via Facebook or social media for people to drop off clothing here. And I think because people were sat at home sorting out their wardrobes and decluttering, I actually multiple times had a stockroom absolutely full of bagged up clothes. And then the young lady, Chantal, that ran the community clothes bank would come and collect it. She'd stand outside and I would throw her bags, and she'd sort through it all and give it to people that were in need. A lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people weren't getting furloughed. There were a lot of women that were in really bad marriages, and then because of being locked down, abusive partners were just too much to tolerate and had to move out. And so a lot of women were left with not only no clothes for themselves, but potentially for their babies, their toddlers, their children. So that was really nice to be able to be involved in that and to be able to help in a time where people were in crisis. I had actually resigned from my job so that my last working day was going to be the 31st of March 2020. And obviously we went into lockdown before that. And then the plan was that I was going to open up this pet shop, and I couldn't do it because, the person that currently had the shop couldn't empty it because we weren't meant to be doing stuff like that. So I was really lucky. I contacted my old company and asked if they could re-employ me and then furlough me for 3 months, which is exactly what they did. So financially, I was really lucky. And because we weren't spending any money, because we weren't going anywhere, we were able to save a massive chunk of that salary. My husband went back to work after about 6 or 8 weeks into lockdown, so equally he was fine there. And then when I did open here, I opened in the September and then we went back into lockdown, I think it was November. And luckily there were grants. A lot of the businesses around here were able to claim for grants, and I wasn't sure whether I would be able to because I was a new business. But I actually could. I was able to claim several grants, which meant that even though I was still trading and I was taking some money, I wasn't taking a lot because everybody was at home. So I think a lot of us were really lucky. I know a lot of people weren't, especially people that weren't 100% honest with their books. So the people that were honest with their books were able to stay afloat, and those people that weren't honest in their books, when they applied for grants, the council thought that they didn't earn anything anyway, so therefore didn't get grants, and a lot of people went bust. Especially builders. My husband works with a lot of builders, and some were still thriving in lockdown and others had to fold. So it was a tough one for a lot of people. It's really hard to know whether lockdown was effective. All during lockdown, I personally didn't know anybody that got COVID. I've actually had COVID now 4 times, and that has been after we came out of lockdown. The first time I had COVID was June last year. And it was just me at home, and then we all got COVID. 5 of us at home got COVID in the October, and then I got it again in the November, and then I got it again February, March this year. Not severe. I just thought I had a cold, like a real heavy head cold, and it wasn't until I took a test that I was like, oh, okay, I appear to have COVID. But I guess, yes, I think it maybe worked in the respect, there are a lot of really vulnerable people, and, come the end of this whole experience, I've had a few people that I know die because of it, because they were vulnerable and they were put in positions where one friend was really poorly and they took him to hospital. And even though he had tested negative with COVID when he went in, within 2 days, he'd been put on a COVID ward, got COVID and died. So, I don't know, I think the lockdown wasn't necessarily to stop so many people getting it or passing it on, more that, the hospitals just couldn't cope with the amount of people that did need to be ventilated and looked after. So it's hard to know. I think it probably did help. I know a lot of people say it was pointless, but I think, the vulnerable people in my family didn't get it, and that's the main thing.